For just over 3 years, these two Lamy Safaris have accompanied me literally every single day. If you've been with me for a bit, you know that my pens and notebook are my most frequently used things, even more than my phone. But visiting a stationery shop in Taipei on my recent trip, I checked out TWSBI pens for the first time in person. Now, these Safaris have been my sidekicks for years and I've had zero bad experiences, so typically, I wouldn't consider a potential change. But since virtually every component of TWSBIs are designed and manufactured in Taiwan, I thought it'd be fitting to buy my first TWSBIs while I was there. For my typical page executions, I need 2 colors and 2 nib sizes, but after checking out their lineup, I decided to go with our Diamond 580 ALRs. This one in Prussian blue rocking a fine nib, and this one in the box with a broad nib. Taking the case out, we can see that I chose the sunset yellow colorway for pen 2. Lifting off the lid, removing the press fit brackets, and taking it out for the first time, the weight is immediately noticeable and pleasing, with the AL and ALR models like the ones I have here sporting a non-insignificant amount of aluminum in the grip, connector, and even the piston rod itself, not to mention the tremendously beefy zero-give resin on the clear demonstrator barrel. TWSBI's pens do not accommodate cartridges nor converters. Instead, they have an integrated piston chamber, which means these hold a ton of ink, enabling much less frequent refills, and, when combined with the nib sleeve at the base of the cap, prevents ink from drying out. So let's fill this yellow sunset up with this brown ink called Tsukushi by Pilot. The bottle is empty because I wanted to try out TWSBI's Diamond 50 ink bottle, so I transferred it over. Grabbing the pen, taking the cap off, removing the nib and grip, then twisting the end cap counterclockwise to extend the piston all the way down, we're ready to fill and can line up the pen with the fill nozzle on their bottle, and press down so it's confidently seated. And now for the satisfying part. Twisting clockwise, we can see the piston sucking up the ink into the large integrated ink chamber. Get the grip and nib assembly back on, and screwing the cap back on too, we'll stand it up for a minute to let gravity and the feed's capillary action send ink towards the nib. So, how do these nibs write, and how do they feel in use? TWSBI's nibs here are made of steel, same material as the nibs on my beloved Lamy Safaris. I personally find them to be noticeably stiffer than the Safari nib that I'm so used to, and I really like that stiffness since I write really small by default. To be clear, I'm not saying the writing experience is superior or inferior to the Safari. The feel of the sweep is entirely subjective to every user, but for my small font, this stiffness and resulting consistency of feel was a pleasant first impression for my style and use cases. In hand, while in use, is also a different experience. Where the Safari has a triangular grip to seat nicely in a traditional writer's hold, the 580 ALR has this ribbed cylindrical grip. At the Metal Fab workshop, I am used to using and absolutely love this bolt-action pen by tactile turn, so I'm very used to a ribbed texture. So this TWSBI still felt familiar despite having just started trying it out. This is all to say that, especially for those who grip their pens very tight while writing, ribbing might cause discomfort, but for me, as someone who has quite long note-taking sessions in a relatively relaxed grip, this type of texturing is welcomed because it provides that relaxed hold with a touch of friction for a confident, slip-free writing experience. When we're evaluating pens, there are really only 5 considerations. Probably the most important is how it feels in hand during use. This is completely subjective and of course comes down to habit. Like we just explored, if you are used to gripping tremendously tightly, maybe neither the 580 ALR nor the Safari would be good options for you. You'd likely benefit much more from a thicker barrel, and certainly would likely prefer a grip that is not ribbed. The second most important consideration is the glide over the types of paper we typically use. This also comes down to preference. For example, well over 90% of my writing happens inside of Traveler's Company notebooks with their MD paper, which has its own properties. But even still, when I am doing my typical rapid note-taking, I personally prefer some vibratory feedback. You know, that sensation as you go over the page, while when I'm drawing shapes and diagrams, I like a smooth sweep. Typically, the finer the nib, the greater the vibratory feedback, while a medium to broad nib will offer more of a smooth glide. Using both the Safaris and the 580s, first jotting with the fine nibs and then swapping to the broader nibs for some shapes, they both achieve my desired net results. The third consideration is ease of maintenance. You won't need to do this often, but something I did not show in the initial unboxing is the wrench and silicone grease included in the box with the TWSBIs, and that just allows us to completely disassemble to clean and maintain them, because these are built-in piston filling pens, while the Safaris don't really need to be disassembled, because whether you use a cartridge refill or a Lamy converter for your own ink, these are all removable parts, and cleaning is as simple as taking a basting syringe or something like that and blasting water through the feed and nib. Fourth is durability, and I have the utmost confidence in both the Safaris and the TWSBIs. These Safaris have been dropped countless times over the past 3 years and are still absolutely perfect. The TWSBI 580 Diamond ALRs are just so beefy and confidence-inspiring in terms of functional durability. But for folks who want to maintain pristine aesthetic appearance, the TWSBIs will be more challenging. I mean, with any smooth shiny surface, scratches and dings will just appear so much more easily. Smooth glossy barrel, smooth polished clip, smooth shiny finial, scratches will show up, and yet for many folks including me, those scratches and dings tell the beautiful story of real-life use. Finally, the last consideration is value. Between the Diamond 580 ALR and Lamy Safari, the price is at a more than 2x delta, with the Safaris going for $30 and the 580 ALRs at $65. That said, you don't need to squint very hard to see that the materials and manufacturing process used throughout the 580 ALRs are obviously and significantly more premium. From the sheer quantity of individual parts, to a slew of machined aluminum, to the diamond pattern execution of the crystal clear resin, to the final assembly with their striking logo set in an aluminum housing, which all come together to offer a luxurious weighted presence in hand. And yet, the minimalist, clean, no-nonsense yet beautiful Safari has been my sidekick for more than 3 years for many reasons. I mean, how would you evaluate value? If we are going to evaluate based only on whether or not a pen will put a line of ink on a piece of paper, then obviously the Safari wins by more than double. If we're going on details and fit and finish, it's no contest in favor of the TWSBI. So much in fact that it could be easily argued that from a fit and finish perspective alone, the TWSBI is worth way more than double the price of the Lamy Safari. So with all these potential angles of consideration, are these TWSBIs going to replace my Lamy Safaris? Yes and no. Here's what I mean. I travel for at the very least 100 days a year, and when I'm traveling, I don't deal with packing bottled ink, opting instead to go with one-time use cartridges. For those who are curious, I use the brown Safari compatible cartridges by Monteverde and Lamy's own green cartridges. So for travel, it's a non-decision for my preferences. Lamy Safaris hands down. However, at home, these TWSBIs will stay here on my desk. They'll enable me to leave my Safaris over here where I keep everything in my everyday carry kit, ensuring that I'll never accidentally forget them when I head out, and will mean that I'll always have 2 fantastic fountain pens for my page executions when I'm at my desk at home, continuing where I left off during my outbound meetings and planning during the day. The Lamy Safari will always be my first recommendation to anyone who isn't already a fountain pen user but wants to give it a shot. And if you are interested, I've linked everything talked about in this video down in the description below, so you can research them more for yourself. But fountain pen or not, putting pen to paper helps me earn a living more than anything else I own. And if you want to see exactly how pen and paper makes me money, you will definitely want to watch this video right up here. If you're feeling lucky though, this video down here is the one for you. I'll leave them up for a few seconds so you can choose which one to watch next, but while you're deciding, consider liking, subscribing, and hitting that bell so you'll be notified the moment new videos just like this one drop.